So today we're going to be looking at a new, less lethal launcher. It's called the Secure 68P. Here's the packaging that it comes with. It actually says less lethal here, which I like. It's branded as a less lethal launcher. You can get it with pepper rounds and irritant rounds and some rubber rounds. That's what I have here. You can also get it without the pepper rounds if that's not allowed in your area, which it's not, and even in the United States in some places. So it's good to have that. This is a brand new launcher. I just became aware of these on October 30th or the 31st, I can't remember, and I ordered one right away because it's really quite interesting to me. It has a new design. I've got a lot of other launchers here that I'm going to be comparing it to, as you can see, mostly for size comparison, feature comparison, price comparison, those kinds of things. If you're watching this video, you probably are familiar with at least one of these other launchers that I have here. You might even own several of the launchers that I have here. I've got a good selection that I wanted to make sure I covered all the bases, make sure that I have things that are comparable in price, comparable in size, comparable in features. So that packaging that I just showed you would come wrapped around this nice little case. It says P2. This is from Umarex, however you say it. It's a German company, and they have a couple of different brands. This is Prepared to Protect. They also have T4E, Training for Engagement. So let's take a look at what you get. Now I like this zipper case. It seems to be pretty well thought out. It even has on the zippers, it has a little locking or lockable area here where you can put a really skinny lock. When you buy this, it'll come with a zip tie through there that you've got to cut off. I wouldn't call this like, super safe for kids, but it's something. You could, at least prevent it from coming open. Really small children, you could keep them from getting to it, stuff like that. So what you get is a nice padded case. You get your instruction manual, which of course I read thoroughly. Obviously, I always read. I haven't read that. You get a little sticker, Prepared to Protect. You get some branded CO2 cartridges. And I don't typically use these. I like to keep the packaging kind of stock. I probably won't even use these rounds that it came with, but what it came with, some just rubber rounds. These don't feel very heavy. I don't think they have any steel in them. I think it's just rubber. And then you've got your pepper rounds. Now these are both of these are quite interesting. So you've got your powder rounds on the top here. You've got pepper rounds on the bottom. These are their new core defense rounds. 6 of them in each tube. Now they're not just in a tube. They're also shrink wrapped. These two the powder and the pepper rounds. The rubber ones are not shrink wrapped, and I like that. You don't want them to break apart and get everywhere. So, that's a nice little touch. Now I'm going to try it with some kinetic rounds that I have, a few different varieties, because I know people are going to be curious about that. So I ordered mine as soon as I was aware of it, not from Amazon, but I believe you can get these from Amazon now. I ordered mine from Alternate Arms in Fort Worth, Texas. That's the only place that I knew of where I could get it at the time of ordering, so I purchased it from there, and I was just, not only was it the only place that I knew of where I could get it, I was curious about what that experience would be. Everybody who's deep into less lethal, especially on YouTube, is probably familiar with John from Alternate Arms. They have so you can order them from there. You can get, as I did, I don't know how available these are, but they designed a little holster. That's what this is. This is a 3D printed holster. It has some indents in there, so it slips over the trigger guard like that. It's on there pretty securely, like that, and then it has a clip that goes over your belt. And you can get these in right-handed or left-handed. They didn't charge me for that. I don't know if everyone who orders them is going to get that or not, but that was available for me. There was a little sneak peek into one of the features. This is a magazine-fed launcher. 68 caliber, 12 grams CO2 under the barrel, metal magazine. This is the only launcher out of all these on the table here that have a metal magazine. Now this launcher costs $230 is what I paid for it, which I believe is the standard price, what you're going to pay on Amazon. Metal magazine, I believe it's an aluminum barrel. So this is unloaded. This has a lot of cool features. Besides the metal magazine, it has a magazine safety, so you cannot pull that trigger without the magazine in the grip. It has a bladed trigger safety, so if I try and pull it without having my finger on the front of that trigger, it's not going to go back, even with the magazine in. That is quite functional. Now I can pull that back. It has a external hammer, another feature that none of these other launchers have. That's really interesting to me. So the barrel moves as you pull the trigger. I'll try and show you that. Not sure if you can see that on camera, but that barrel moves backwards as you pull the trigger. So it is not a user replaceable barrel. You would have to open this thing up, and at this point I don't know of any other barrels that are available, but you can't just it's not a threaded barrel that you can easily remove. You can't just add a barrel extension onto the end of that. So the metal magazine, it has a couple of cool features. It's quite solid. It has weight to it. It is all metal except for the follower. So you have a little follower pull down here. It locks to the side, and then you load your rounds through the back end, and then it has a detent built into the magazine instead of being built into the launcher itself. That's cool. I like that, because I'll try and get that on camera. So you can replace that. I don't know where you would buy one, or if people are going to make different ones or whatever, but you would put some pressure on here, push it down, and then it comes out through the bottom here. Now it feels like it's made of rubber. Under heavy use, that will wear out over time. So it's really cool that you don't have to pull the launcher apart in order to replace that detent. They're built into the magazines. It's a 6-round magazine. Let me just load up a couple of rounds real quick. So I have the follower locked down. You load in some rounds. This is a riot ball and a QAB from Umarex. So I've got one riot ball loaded in there, a QAB. So now I don't really like a lot of the magazines that have that spring-loaded arm on top. And if you press that spring-loaded arm, the rounds can go flying everywhere. This is is a better design, in my mind at least. So it's being held in place by that detent. There's a smaller opening on the front, larger opening in the rear. So if I tap it like this, that round stays in place. If I tap it the other direction, it can come loose. There we go. But if you've got that follower all the way up, it takes a little bit of effort to get that out of there, which is good. I want them to stay in place. I don't want my rounds flying everywhere. So as I mentioned, this is a 6-round magazine. They make a 9-round magazine as well. I have one of those from Alternate Arms on order, and I have one on order from Modern Combat Sports. Let's see who delivers first. So when I ordered this, I ordered it with an extra 6-round magazine because that's all I saw that was available on their website. I received the package. I noticed there's no extra magazine in the package. I just got this kit plus the holster. And so I went on the website. I contacted Alternate Arms. They responded very quickly. Usually you send an email to somebody and you wait a few days and see if they respond. Someone responded within 10 minutes, maybe less. I tend to think, I'm thinking it might have been John from Alternate Arms because he responded with a very enthusiastic tone. And you know, anybody who's seen John's videos, he's a super enthusiastic guy. I inquired about this extra magazine, and he said, well, which one do you want? You want the 6-round or the 9-round? They make Umarex makes a 9-round magazine that sticks out quite a ways. And I told him, well, I'm pretty sure I paid for just the 6-rounder. And he said, oh, well, I don't remember his exact words, but he said something to the effect of, we're going to sell the 6-rounder and the 9-rounder for the same price, I believe he said. They're supposed to be, the 9-rounders are supposed to be a little bit more expensive. I think they're $25 or $30. I can't remember. Which is pretty good, I think. So he's going to send me a 9-rounder for the price of a 6-rounder. He doesn't know me or anything like that. I'm not getting a special deal. He says they're going to sell the 6-rounders and the 9-rounders for the same price. So, speaking of this magazine, you'll notice it has a little triangle right there. So that triangle is a tool, similar to how the Byrna magazines have a tool built in to tighten and loosen your CO2 cap. So if you'll notice here, see how it has some screws around the side, it's got the triangle in the middle. So that's not just a solid piece of metal, that's something of an assembly. So that's one of their new features. What do they call it? They have a name for it. Let's see here. STS, Set Torque Seal Technology. It's a brand new technology. Okay, so you use your tool built into the magazine to loosen it. Obviously, there's no CO2 in here now. But in order to prevent over-tightening, they have a system in here where, watch and listen to this. So I feel a little bit of tension right now. A little more tension, a little more tension. You hear that? So that's preventing me from over-tightening. It's, I don't know what to call it, a ratchet? I don't know. But it will not, no matter how many times I tighten it, it won't let you over-tighten it. Really nice little feature. Let's take that out and I'll let you look inside. So that's what it looks like on the inside there. Your 12 gram CO2 goes in. So So you would put a little bit of marker oil on the end. Now your CO2 goes in this way, because one of the, and then you tighten down the cap. I'm not going to load it right now. Let's get that on there. Just finger tighten that. So one of the highlight features for this launcher, to puncture that CO2, it has what they call a response ready trigger. That's just their branding. And this is something that Byrna has had in the past, a similar system. I'm sure the inner workings are different, but this is something that Byrna has had in the past and no one else has had. So you load up your CO2, and to puncture it, instead of a puncture cap on the bottom that we all have used before, you pull the trigger. So you pull the trigger to pierce that CO2. The first round will come out at a reduced power, and then the second round will come out at higher power. This is rated at 19 joules. I believe that's what they have on the package. So I'll test that. I've got a variety of ammunition. I've got some Grimberg joules, some QABs, some Riot Balls, some Smasher XLs, and some just plastic or nylon, can't remember, practice rounds from Modern Combat Sports. And I'm going to try all those and see what I get. A lot of people are getting 20 joules, 21 joules, you know. It's pretty potent for a Umarex product straight out of the box. It's kind of exciting. This seems like a new step, a new evolution of less lethal launchers. It has really good features. This is $230 is what I paid for it, which is the same price that I paid for my Salt Supply S2. Let's do some size comparisons. So we've got our Prepared to Protect Secure 68P. It's got a nice Picatinny rail on the bottom here. And unlike the, I'll use the, here's a size comparison of a Gen 2 50 caliber, so it's not apples to apples, 50 caliber TP50 Gen 2. So it's going to be considerably thicker. 50 caliber versus 68 caliber, of course they can't be the same size. You can see the sights are very similar. They have these nice fiber optic sights that people really like, and I like as well. External hammer. Also, you can do, I don't have the magazine in there at the moment, but you can pull that hammer back with your thumb. Kind of like you would on some actual firearms. And that gives it the effect of having a lighter trigger pull. I don't know if a lot of people are going to do that, but it's there. So, a lot of similarities to a firearm. And I'll tell you what, speaking of firearms, the fact that it's a metal magazine going into a plastic frame, it sounds and feels similar to a real firearm. It's pleasant. I'll do it close to the microphone here a few times. Ever since I got this thing, I've been inserting the magazine, releasing the magazine repeatedly, just because it's a satisfying sound and satisfying feel. I don't know. It's more firearms-like than any of these others on the table. Let's hear what that sounds like. Just doing that close to the mic. So, pretty cool. So let's compare it to the Salt Supply S2. This would be the closest in price. and it has a similar power output. It does not have a pull-to-pierce trigger. It's a puncture cap like most less lethals. 5-round magazine underneath the barrel. 12 grams CO2 goes in the handle. Similar in size. The salt supply is a little bit longer, probably because it has that magazine, removable magazine under the barrel. So it's kind of a long barrel and long upper there. The Saber, similar in size, a little bit more compact than the Saber. Everyone will probably be curious about the Pistol. These are not in the same price category. Obviously, this is nearly twice the price of the Secure 68P. And I have to say, it feels like you're getting a lot for your money with the Secure 68. Compared to some of these, it is a little bit more compact. It feels kind of chunky, but when I actually compare them side by side, it's fairly compact. So, yeah, let's take a look at a pepper ball. This is a pepper ball TRP. It's kind of washed out in the lights. Can't see that branding so much. A little bit more compact. I was thinking this was going to be a little bit bigger. It feels, I mean, it has to be quite large. It's 68 caliber. Let's compare it to some more compact options, such as a very compact option, the Byrna CL, with our East Coast less lethal magazine extender on there. With the magazine extension, it's about the same height. Obviously, this is not apples to apples either. This is 61 caliber versus 68 caliber. So that Byrna is quite a bit smaller. Now here's one that I haven't talked about yet. I might do a video on this little guy. A lot of people are kind of curious about these. This is a really low-priced option. This is the Byrna BP50. This is not modified. It came black like this. So let's compare. This is, again, 50 caliber versus 68, so it can be thinner and it can hold more rounds. Byrna BP50. Quite a bit smaller. So I think you're getting a lot for your money here with the Secure 68P. It has a lot of cool features. It has an ambidextrous magazine release. I didn't mention that. So you can do it with your thumb or with your index finger. Very cool. Speaking of the magazine release, when you eject that magazine, it is under spring tension. Usually let's say a typical magazine-fed launcher usually comes with some kind of spring-loaded arm at the top of the magazine. I'm not a big fan of these, but it often serves two purposes. It keeps the rounds from coming out until that is depressed, but it also gives you a little bit of spring tension, so when you do hit that magazine release, it uses that spring force to push the magazine out of the launcher. So with a different design, without that spring-loaded arm at the top, how are you going to eject that magazine with force? Well, they thought that through as well. So in the magazine well, see that little cutout right there? There is a spring-loaded mechanism in there that pushes directly on that triangular tool. So when you release that magazine, watch this. See that? It comes out with some amount of force. Very cool. They thought that through. And that's the impression that I get. They just put some engineering effort into this in every way. It feels well thought out. It feels feature rich for the price. And I'm really, really quite pleased with it so far. Now, we'll see how it fires. But I think this would be a rather good option for chemical rounds. It has at 19, 20 joules. That's enough to reliably fracture chemical rounds, powder rounds. It might not be enough for kinetics. If you just want to do kinetics, maybe this isn't quite enough. 19, 20 joules, that will cause pain, but will it stop somebody? Probably not. But if you're interested in chemical rounds, those are probably a pretty good option for this. Now they have a picture of the chemical rounds on the packaging. So the core defense chemical rounds, if you see here, there's a metal BB in the center. So that probably helps it fly true and carry some force with it, as well as help it break apart on impact. So you can see it's supported by 3 little arms here, and then your powder would go in the sections between that. So I tend to think that they thought this thing through quite well. I think a good addition to this would be a light. Now, on the HDP 50s, this is probably less than half the price of that. So you have to manage your expectations on these. This is just a Gen 1 here, 7.5 joules. I have the 13 joule Gen 2 here. Now, in order to load these, you have to turn it upside down. I think most people are familiar with these. You would load it from underneath the barrel here, and there's an internal 6-round magazine, spring-loaded, obviously. So that kind of prevents you from using some lights. You would have to put the light way up front here, and that would be out of reach for your trigger finger, which is how you would usually actuate and turn on those lights. Here, since we're magazine fed, that rail goes all the way back close to the trigger guard. So I think this is an inexpensive launcher, right? So I wouldn't necessarily put a super high priced light on it. So I think this Trika inexpensive mini underbarrel light is a pretty good fit for this inexpensive. I consider this to be an inexpensive launcher. Like I said, $230, and with the kit, they could probably sell it a little bit cheaper. They could probably sell it for $200 if they didn't include that kit, and they just shipped it in a cardboard box or something like that. I think this is a great little upgrade for this type of launcher. So it installs, it has a toolless install, so there's a little lever on the side. Oops. So you just use that little lever. It installs real easily, quickly, easily. And you got a good amount of light there. So this, with maybe a 9-round magazine, would be my loadout of choice for this launcher. Like I said, some chemical rounds would be a really good choice for this, I think. if I wanted to do kinetics only, you know, I think most people would choose something like this instead of the 68p, something that puts out 40, 50 joules, something like that. But then you're really going up in price. That's a totally different animal. But I think we're all familiar with most of these. So now I'd like to, one other thing I'd like to do real quick. So one other thing I'd like to try real quick. A lot of people have probably got into the habit of testing your rounds before you fire them. So I have a variety here. This is probably the cheapest, lightest one. This is just a practice round from Modern Combat Sports. Here we have an Umarex T4E QAB, the quick access balls. These are supposed to break glass. Here we have a riot ball, which I think is like nylon with a metal BB in the middle of it. We have the Grimberg Jewels, and then a Smasher XL from Less Lethal Ballistics. That's Glenn Conti. So I just want to put these down the barrel real quick and see what kind of fit we get. Now, I don't know exactly what the bore measures on this. Is it 6.84? Is it 6.8? Whatever. I don't know. So my unscientific test here is to just take some of these rounds and see if they fit comfortably down the barrel. So here we have the QAB. Oh yeah. So that goes in there nice and smooth, comes out very easily. So we know that one's going to work. Let's try the riot ball. A little bit, I could feel a little bit more resistance on that one. And it doesn't come out quite as easily. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh, there she goes. Slightly tighter fit on the riot ball. And I think a lot of these are going to be a little bit tighter. So Modern Combat Sports practice round. That went in nice and smooth and easily, kind of like the QAB. That should be great. And then everyone's probably curious about the Grimberg Jewels. These are magnetic. They have metal inside them. Not a BB, but I believe it's a composite, I don't know if it's plastic, nylon, I don't know what the other material is, but these have enough metal inside them that they are magnetic. That went in pretty well. Oh, a little bit tighter, kind of like the riot ball. She's going to fly out on me. Okay, there we go. Tighter fit. And then the Smasher XL. Now, I'm sure this one's going to be a little tighter. Let's try it out. Oh, okay. These are all going to work. Get out. There we go. So I had to, that's the tightest fit, the Smasher XL. I had to point it down and pull the trigger a few times, get that barrel moving back and forth as it does, and got that Smasher up. Those all seem safe to me. I would fire any of those rounds through this. So let's take it out of the garage, see how she does. Here we go with the Umarex Secure 68P, loaded with 6 rounds of Grimberg Jewels. It says 8 gram on the package. I'll put the actual weight up on the screen. Here we go. That is 228. Second round, 234. Third round, 228. Fourth round, 222. Fifth round, fifth round, 214. Last round, sixth round, 208. I just fired 6 rounds of Grunberg Jewels with the Secure 68. Now, just for fun, without a loaded magazine, I'm going to fire off the rest of the CO2. See how many shots we get. So I fired 6. Let's see. 7, 8. Now, that's in the 40s. I lost count. So, it's still able to fire quite a bit. Of course, your feet per second and joules are going to drop a lot after those first few rounds. So, you might be wondering, how do you degas this thing? Normally, on most launchers, you would have a puncture cap that you would twist counterclockwise to degas it. No such option here. So what do you do? Besides firing it off a whole bunch of times, there is a little bit of a workaround there. So when you pull the trigger, keep that trigger held back and then press on the hammer. That's not in the instructions, that's just something I saw online. Let's try that now. I've got the trigger held back. I'm going to press on the hammer. There was a little bit of a degassing there. I'll try it again with more gas later to show you that. But that's a little workaround there if you need to degas. Here we go with the Secure 68 again. Loaded with some very lightweight plastic or nylon rounds from Modern Combat Sports. I let the launcher warm up for about half an hour. This is my second round of shots. Interesting. 336. 350, 338, 334, 328. One more. 322. Again. Here we go again. Umarex Secure 68P. Fresh CO2 cartridge. I've let her warm up for quite a while. Loading her up with the riot balls. Let's see what she does. That's 288. $294. $294 again. $282. And $280. Do you have any more in there? Got one left. $270. So here we go again. Secure 68P. I've let her warm up. And by the way, I've been keeping the CO2 cartridges in my pocket while I go indoors and outdoors, into the house, out to the garage. So the CO2s are a little bit warmer than the launcher, but I've been letting it warm up at least half an hour to 45 minutes between firing it. Now I'm loaded up with the Umarex QABs. I'm also doing a slow trigger pull. So if you notice, I'm doing a slow trigger pull. So my first shots are a little bit lower than my second shots, but they're pretty good. They're way more than the half speed that I was expecting. I'm just used to doing a slow controlled trigger pull. So that's what I'm going to keep doing. $332. A little bit higher on the second one, $340. Oh, no reading on that one. I messed it up. $324. Focus. There we go. $316. $314. And that was my last shot. There we go. Now here we go with a warm CO2 cartridge. Going to try some Smasher XLs from Less Lethal Ballistics. Loaded up with 6 rounds. These really have some weight to them. I haven't measured them yet, but these must be the heaviest rounds that I've tried so far today. At least that's what they feel like. They feel a little heavier than the Grimberg Jewels. We'll see when I actually measure. I've let our Secure 68P warm up. Loaded a warm CO2 cartridge in there, and just for fun, I put the Trika T2 Mini on there. I'm going to try out the light. Now there is no manual safety on this. The safeties that are built in, the trigger safety, magazine safety, that's all you've got. But that's sufficient, in my opinion. Let's see what we can do. Light up our target, nice slow trigger pull. .222 on the Smasher XL, first round. 228, 222, 216, 208, 194. I know this video is getting a little bit long-winded, but at this point, you know, in for a penny, in for a pound. There's still some things that I want to talk about after firing this launcher. Some basic things. The CO2 cartridges that I used were just your basic Umarex brand 12 gram CO2s. Nothing special about that, but I know people would be curious. About the trigger pull. I said that as far as safety goes, it has two safeties, the magazine safety, the trigger safety. It also has a long trigger pull. That can be considered something of a safety feature if you want. And I'm just used to firing firearms with a long, slow trigger pull, so that's what I did every time. I didn't do anything special for that first slow trigger pull to try and get the numbers higher. I just fired it the same way every time. A nice, slow, controlled trigger pull. I can't really afford to miss. If I put a hole in the garage, I'm in deep trouble. So that's the story on the trigger pull. Now, I wanted to say something about, speaking of firearms, I wanted to say something about training. I think that this makes a better training tool than the HDP 50, which is under the brand, I believe, yes, you can, this says T4E on it. They have a, I'm not pointing it at myself at the moment, by the way. It looks like I am, but I'm not. So it says T4E. They have a couple of different brands. These are both Umarex products. Now, this is kind of marketed as a training tool and a home defense weapon. Since this functions in a similar fashion to an actual firearm, it's magazine fed, it has a magazine release, it has a hammer, long trigger pull, everything about it. You just pull the trigger to puncture that CO2. A lot of things about it seem more like a more optimal training tool than something like this. My dad and I have put this particular launcher in the hands of a new shooter before we went to the range, and it helped with sight alignment, but it didn't really help so much with trigger pull. We were just dry firing it indoors. You could put a CO2 in there and then something would happen when you pull the trigger, but this you can dry fire and that hammer's going to come back, and something's going to actually happen, more similar to a real firearm. So the potential for a training tool is there, in my opinion. One other thing I wanted to mention, this is kind of a positive. A lot of times when you have these launchers with the spring-loaded mechanism at the top of the magazine, you tend to lose rounds when you eject the magazine. That doesn't happen here. So when you eject that magazine, on a lot of launchers, you get 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 rounds just fall out of the bottom of the magazine well. That doesn't happen here, thanks to the design, the different design of the magazine. That's pretty cool. It's pretty awkward when you have to, eject the magazine like this, and then you're like, oh, I gotta pour out the rounds like that. You don't have to do that here. So, one other thing to touch on. I've been watching some videos about this launcher online. A couple of things I learned. So this slide, it's not really a slide, it does not move, can be removed with just by removing one pin right here. So you would take a tool, a punch or something, and push that through to the other side, remove it, and then it's held on by two tabs at the front. So just by removing that one pin, you can remove this upper section, and then if you wanted to, you could dye it black or whatever color you want, brown, I don't know. But so that's a positive. The rest of the launcher seems really quite complicated. Once you take that upper off, I'm not speaking from experience, just from the videos that I've seen. There's a lot to it. It is not quite as simple as something like this from what I have seen. Again, not speaking from experience. So I mentioned that I bought this from Alternate Arms in Fort Worth, Texas. I wanted to clear up something real quick. I kind of made it sound earlier in the video as though they had made a mistake by not packing an extra magazine in the box. That really wasn't up to them as far as I can tell. Umarex is not selling that 9-round magazine yet, or not allowing it to be sold. I'm sure they probably already have it in stock, but at the time I contacted them, they told me they couldn't sell it for 2 weeks yet. That was on a Friday. I can't remember what date exactly, but it's you'll probably see this on Monday, Tuesday, something like that. So still more than a week from the time of publishing this video before they're allowed to sell that magazine for some reason. They really did. It's kind of a weird launch. It's more like a launch that you would see from something in the technology sector, like a new video game console, a new video card, computer components, a new game, something like that, where they ship things out to reviewers and then they make them sign a non-disclosure agreement, and then they can't talk about it until a certain day. So on October 30th, I believe it was, lots of YouTube videos dropped about this launcher because they sent these out to YouTubers and before October 30th, and then on that date they were allowed to release all their videos. So that's just kind of an interesting thing. And now, so they're still haven't launched that 9-round magazine for some reason. Now, in the testing, in the shooting, so the quote-unquote winner of my testing was the riot balls. So these are kind of a medium weight. They're about 5 grams. Quite a bit lighter than the Smasher XLs. A lot lighter. These are 8.6 grams. And what they look like on the inside, I was always curious. So they have a metal BB in the middle. So it's some type of plastic, I don't know, nylon or whatever it is. And then a metal BB in the middle. I think it's stainless steel, it's magnetic, it's not aluminum. And that, it had the highest average, the riot balls had the highest average joules for the 6 rounds that I fired for each of these projectiles. I noticed once I got to the 6th round, these were carrying more energy out of the muzzle. Remember, I'm only measuring muzzle velocity here. They carried more energy out of the muzzle than the Smashers did. So I was getting 17 joules by the 6th round. I was getting 15 joules by the 6th round with the Smasher XLs. So it just seems that as the pressure drops, a lighter weight projectile was actually working better. So I think once I get those 9-round magazines, I'll probably load them up with the riot balls. That would probably be my choice for this launcher. Now, I did have a slightly higher maximum joule output with the smashers. I think not by a lot, like half a joule maybe, higher on one shot. But the average goes to the riot balls. Now, I've said a lot of positive things about this launcher. What are the negatives? It's kind of a short list so far. I haven't found a lot of negatives. But it's not perfect. Obviously, nothing is. So I've said good things about this magazine, but it is not perfect. The rounds can come out. Let me just load up a couple. So I'll lock that follower down, put in 3 rounds, and then I'm going to release the follower. Now this time it didn't happen, I've had instances where on releasing that follower, that top round actually comes out. It's only happened once or twice, but it can happen. It's just held in place by a piece of rubber on the back, on the top here. So it's not perfect. Not perfect, but it's one of my favorite magazines so far. Another con to this is the upgradability. So there's nothing on the market for this currently, as far as I know, because it just came out. People are just getting it in their hands. There's probably not that many of these in the wild yet. But the fact that the barrel moves as you pull the trigger, and it's not a user replaceable barrel, threaded barrel that you can just remove and put a longer one on, that's a con. I kind of, at this juncture, I think the upgradability is, I would say only buy this at this point if you're satisfied with a 19 to 20 joule launcher. There's no guarantee that we're going to get extra power out of these. It doesn't seem to be, just from what I'm hearing online and seeing, it doesn't seem like it's going to be quite as upgradable as the old HDP 50s and things like that. One other small con to this is a lot of launchers that are magazine fed will allow you to hot load or load one extra round into the magazine well. You don't have that option here. You can't do a 6+1 by putting a round in there before you insert the magazine. So that's a little bit of a con. You're stuck to 6 rounds unless you get that 9-round magazine. So it's like I said, it's a pretty short list of cons, but I'll probably find more as I go along. This won't be my only video for the Secure 68. I'm sure people are going to have questions and things that they want me to do in the comments, such as do a fast trigger pull. I'm working on putting together a larger trap, a more robust trap, where maybe I'll be able to safely do a fast trigger pull. And I'm really interested to see beyond 6 rounds. I'm sure people are curious about that, what the drop in power is going to be beyond 6 rounds. I'm definitely going to do a test with the 9-round magazines. I'm not going to do a variety of ammunition types the way I have here. I'll probably just do the ones that I like, which are the riot balls. So do 9 rounds, maybe a reload, 9 more rounds, something like that. Something manageable that I can put together in a video. So thank you for sticking around for this long-winded, haphazard type of video. I like what I see so far. Let me know in the comments, do you have one of these yet? Are you going to order one? What do you think of it? Let me know. So far, so good. See you around.